This lesson is review, trying to help us get a really firm foundation on solving one-step equations and inequalities, because this is something that is going to last for all of your math career, solving equations. It'll also start showing up more in science as you keep moving on, so I want to make sure we've got a good firm foundation on this. Okay, so there's several different types of problems that we have to do when we are solving one-step equation inequalities. So if the problem is adding a number to the variable, which you can see here on 1 and 2, it's d plus 2, x plus 3, so that's what I mean by that. You subtract that number from both sides. Okay, so let's do 1 and 2, and then we'll talk about this starred thing after we do 1 and 2. So 1, d plus 2. We've got to do the opposite of what's happening to the variable to get the variable by itself. So we know if we add 2 to d, the answer is going to be 12. So if we subtract 2 from both sides, that tells us that d must equal 10, because 10 plus 2 equals 12. Okay, if you have a number and you add 3 to it, it's going to be bigger than 6. So we subtract 3 from both sides, and we get x is greater than 3. So if you plug in any number bigger than 3, this will be true. This is an important thing to remember. I have very good students who forget this often. So I try to emphasize this as much as I can. Adding a positive number and subtracting a negative number are the same thing. So right here, you might first look at number 3 and 4 and say, wait, this isn't the same type of problem. They're not adding to the variable, they're subtracting. Well, they're subtracting a negative number. So you always change minus a negative to plus a positive. So always, always, always. When you see two minuses or a minus and a negative next to each other, change it to plus a positive. So this problem is identical to saying negative 4 is less than y plus 7. So to solve it, we do what we did on 1 and 2. We subtract that number from both sides. We get negative 11 is less than y. Same here. You might think, well, this isn't adding. It is, because subtracting a negative is the same thing as plus a positive. It's really just using the keep, change, change. Remember that for subtracting. Keep, change, change. So minus a negative turns into plus a positive. So we subtract 4 from both sides. We get x equals 7. So that's one type of problem you'll see, where we're adding or subtracting a negative, because that's the same thing. Now the second type of problem is when we are actually subtracting a positive number. We add that number to both sides. So on number 5, c minus 6, they're subtracting 6. So we'll do the opposite and we'll add 6. We get 15 equals c. Okay, now this also has to do with keep, change, change. Subtracting a positive number and adding a negative number are the same thing. Because here, I know we don't write plus for the positive, but this is c minus a positive 6. This is x plus a negative 2, which is the same thing as saying x minus a positive 2, because it's keep, change, change. So we add 2 to both sides. We get x is greater than or equal to 19. Now I want to go ahead and pause right here and say, as we're doing practice with this, homework, classwork, all that stuff, I'd recommend you have this with you so you can refer to it. Because especially these starred things are going to be important for your members who are working through this. Another way you can think about it on number 6 is you pay attention to the sign directly in front of the number, not the one that's one away from it. So it's a negative 2 here, so that's why we have to add 2 to both sides. Okay, 7, we're doing y minus 11, so we add 11 to both sides. And we get y is less than 45. Okay, and 8 is another important example because you might say, well, wait, they're not subtracting, they're adding. But remember, subtracting a positive number and adding a negative number mean the same thing. So again, you don't look at what's to the right of the number, you look at what's directly to its left. So since that's a negative 4, we will add 4 to both sides. So when you're deciding what to do to move a number over, don't look at what's after it. Look at what is directly before it. This was directly before this 2 was a negative, so we added 2. What was directly before this 4 is a negative, so we added 4. Okay. Problem type number 3. When the problem is multiplying a number, you can see this is 9 times a, negative 2 times x, 5 times x. You divide that number on both sides. Now, the way to solve equations and inequalities is almost identical. When we're multiplying and dividing, though, you've got to remember, when you divide or multiply by a negative number, you must flip or reverse the inequality sign. So that only affects us with inequalities. You can't flip an equal sign. It looked the same. It wouldn't make any difference. But when you divide or multiply by a negative number, you must flip the inequality sign. And we'll see that as we keep going through this section and in the fourth section. Okay, so this is 9 times a. So we do the opposite and we divide by 9. So we get a equals 9. This is negative 2 times x. So we do the opposite and we divide by negative 2. Oh, and I made the mistake. I just told you guys not to. I wish I could say I did it on purpose to prove a point, but the truth is I just forgot. But I remember now. So this is wrong because I divided by a negative number. And whenever you divide or multiply by a negative number, you must flip the inequality sign. So I should have said x is less than or equal to negative 9. Okay, number 11, it's 5 times x. So we divide both sides by 5. Negative 25 divided by 5 is negative 5. And we do not flip the inequality on this one. Because while this is a negative number, what we divided both sides by was not. So it doesn't matter what the number on the other side is. It matters what you're dividing or multiplying by on both sides. Since we are dividing by a positive 5, we leave the inequality just the way it is. Okay, last type. When the problem is dividing a number, which you can see these are x divided by 4, y divided by negative 3, g divided by negative 2, you multiply that number on both sides. And if the variable is being multiplied by a fraction, which you'll see once we get down to 15 and 16, you multiply both sides by the fraction's reciprocal. R-E-C-I-P-R-O-C-A-L. R-E-C-I-P-R-O-C-A-L. I'm just spelling it because my handwriting wasn't very good right there with the C and the I. Just want to make sure you knew. Okay, so reciprocal, just a reminder, like if we had 2/3, the reciprocal is 3/2. Or if we had negative 2 over 7, the reciprocal is negative 7 over 2. And it doesn't matter where you put the negative sign. You do keep it negative, but if you want to keep the 2 negative instead of the 7, that makes no difference. It's fine either way. Okay, so number 12. This is x divided by 4. So the opposite of dividing by 4 is multiplying by 4. Because remember, this is a 4 over 1. So that's why the 4's cancel out. So we get x is less than or equal to 44. This is y divided by negative 3, so we multiply both sides by negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 5 is positive 15. And we get 15 equals y, or y equals 15. Okay, 14, we've got to multiply both sides by negative 2. So this is negative 2 over 1, so that's why those negative 2's cancel. Negative 2 times 7 is negative 14. And because we multiply by a negative number, we have to flip the inequality sign the other way. So we get negative 14 is less than g. Okay, so here's where I was talking about the reciprocal. So when it's being multiplied by a fraction, what you do is you multiply both sides by the reciprocal. So I just flip this upside down, multiply both sides by 3. Because then the 3's cancel. Just have a 1 now, 1x. And 6 times 3 is 18. 18 divided by 1 is still 18. On 16, it's 1/4 times t. So we multiply by the opposite, the reciprocal. So 4 over 1. So the 4's cancel. And again, we multiplied by a positive number. I know the 8 is negative, but what we multiplied both sides by is positive, so we won't have to change which direction the inequality is facing. 4 times negative 8 is negative 32, less than t. So negative 32 is less than t. Last one, w divided by 10. So we do the opposite and we multiply both sides by 10. 10's cancel out. 10 divided by 10 is 1. And negative 3 times 10 is negative 30. Okay.